Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today on the podcast, we have Carrolee Drummonds. Carrolee, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you and I have talked a little bit here before we started and we traded some emails. And I think where I'd like to start the conversation, especially, with everything going on in the world and all this kind of hoopla around politics and everything that's kind of out there, is as entrepreneurs, I feel like we're directly affected by some of these things in financial ways and industries and I think there's one core root of this whole thing from an entrepreneurial standpoint that kind of makes us, I don't want to say bulletproof, but it makes us very resilient in this process and its mindset. So that said, I kind of want to jump into that and what does that look like, for each of us, and we'll kind of go back and forth. But as an entrepreneur, and I'll just kick us off here, one of the biggest things that I've learned from the beginning is that stagnancy is your enemy. You have to be nimble, you have to be prepared to pivot, and you have to go where you authentically need to go. I'm all for admiring and aspiring to be like others and even studying others, but at the end of it, you have to tear it down and decide if it fits for you and it fits for your brand and it fits for, the direction that you want to go. So the ability to kind of see the forest through the trees and pivot and make logical, smart decisions, that's what this whole game is about. So that said, what are your thoughts on that? And, how do you kind of implement that in your business?
Sure. So before I get started on that answer, because that's a really juicy question,
Yeah.
I want to introduce myself to your audience. My name is Carrolee Drummonds. As he said, I am the proud owner of the Carrolee Consulting Group. We help experts and speakers, consultants, pretty much service-based providers with a lot of experience step outside of the social media hamster wheel, if you will, and get their voice heard in front of their target audience, people that they actually want to work with, using podcasts and other what I've deemed antisocial content vehicles. And how I got to that point is directly connected to the pivot, right? I am a marketer, but beyond a marketer, I'm a storyteller. I've been doing graphic design for 15 years plus at this point. I was a published poet, all of these things. I'm a preacher, I'm a licensed preacher. There are so many things that we do that when we step into entrepreneurship, I genuinely believe every person that is an entrepreneur, you've known that you're an entrepreneur, or at least you've known that something's a little different for a long time. And you have likely been trying to find your way in different things. And you are one of the few people who have decided to not just stay in a place because it's safe. Yeah. And so as we are in this world now where some people right now are not feeling super safe, I think it's important for us to remember that safety starts in the mind, right? And as you continue to grow in business, you recognize that the limitation that you put on yourself, starting mentally, actually will manifest itself in your business. And as a marketer, I see the same thing with how people attempt to grow their business. We often try to replicate what someone else did. And of course, success leaves clues. But as an entrepreneur, again, the reason why you got to where you are is because you have taken the path less traveled, right? Yeah. And so in order to continue to grow and to go to new heights, what I've learned, even in my decision to kind of go the podcast pitching and whatever route, while all the other marketers, for the most part, are stuck on social media, trying to kind of make that pop, you have to go where makes the most sense for you. I like long form content. I've always been a fan of podcasts, so that's my thing. There are people who really love speaking in front of, one-to-many type of situation. So if that's your case, do that and grow your business that way. Develop live events, borrow other people's audiences and speak in front of their audience. This is the time, if you're an entrepreneur for real, this is the time that you prove that, because you sharpen your skills, whatever they may be, and get moving in a direction that might be counter to whatever everyone else is doing. And those are the folks that I feel like in the next few years, you're going to see them skyrocket off. versus like trying to replicate someone else.
Yep. So one of the things I like to do on this podcast is kind of break things down for people, because a lot of what, marketers say, like entrepreneurs, we say things like pivot, don't panic. We say things like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like
Yeah.
we say things like that, but people don't know what that means. So to take a step back from what we just kind of shared, how does somebody do that? Where do they find, you know, the inner guts to take that leap and to kind of dig through that? Like I can start by saying, I think it's important to prioritize kind of your mediums. Like if you, like you said, if podcast is your lead horse, then okay, how do I put at least 60-70% of my efforts there, but then utilize social media or email or whatever it is to supplement, to drive traffic, to whatever it is, because this recipe is fluid. There's a lot of same ingredients, but the recipe is fluid, and how you use it and the dosages you use, that's up to you. But find a way that works. And
Yeah.
and I get I'll just add this one thing and I'll shut up. I get a lot of people that ask me about like traditional marketing. Like, well, what about paid ads? What about billboards? What about, and I'm like, if it works, do it. Like I'm not anti anything. If it works, do it. But you got to find what works.
Yeah, I think that we say the like you said, the cliches. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But like, why are we still doing that? Like,
Right,
we're still
right.
doing those same things in our business, especially when it comes to marketing. And I definitely fell into that when I first started. I remember sitting with a mentor of mine. This directly goes to your question of like, what do you do if you're trying to figure this out? One, I believe resiliency can be taught. It's actually something I'm super passionate about. And given my life story, I know you can learn the skills that will make you more resilient. That one. Two, it ties in with the first question, but goes a bit deeper. When you're thinking about, okay, there's this mountain,
Yep.
which is, okay, I'm trying to grow. I really don't like making phone calls. I don't like making cold calls. It's like my least favorite thing to do. I would rather jump out of a plane, which is something I will never do, than make random phone calls. I said that to my mentor when I first started. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not an option. You have to do that. And I said, well, I'm not going to. He said, well, if you're not going to do that, then whatever you're going to do to replace it, you have to go just as hard as you would with that. I said, okay,
Yep.
watch me. So instead of making a whole bunch of phone calls to businesses in the area, I went to every network and event that was in existence for 6 months straight. I was out of my house for 4 to 5 nights a week, and then sometimes double tapping in the morning and the afternoon. And then I created a system to say, okay, I'm going to these events. I want to meet these types of people. Okay, great. I've met these types of people. Okay, how can I help them? How can I connect them? So after 6 months, people started being like, you've only been in this area for 6 months? Yep. And I was able to start making those connections, and then people started referring me. I built that referral network into a multi-six-figure business.
Yep.
No advertising, almost no social media posts. And mind you, I was in marketing. So that goes to show you again, even as we were doing social media management for other people, because I can do it and I've done it for corporations, it's not what I wanted to do and how I wanted to build my business. And so that's to say, if you're wanting to be resilient, it is not, we have a culture where we have a lot of desires. People desire to be rich. People desire to have a successful business. People desire certain things, but are not willing to put in the amount of sweat equity that it takes to do it. And that is resiliency. Resiliency is choosing to put your foot one in front of the other, even when you either don't know what the future is and you just kind of keep going, keep knocking, or you're pretty sure the future is not going to be great, like within the next 5 minutes, but you're looking far down the road as to what is possible. And for me, marketing sales, doesn't matter what it is that you're thinking about as far as growing your business, resiliency and a little just not being, I call it like temporary insanity for entrepreneurs. Is like your bank account is empty,
Well,
your bills
it's
are piling up, and you're like, this is great. I can do this. I have, you know what I mean? Like you kind of have to trick your mind a little bit as you're going through.
I think it's a, for me it was like I needed to attack the fear of failure with something.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing. I mean, I was hardcore networking. I mean, I was going to meetings and stuff too, but I was doing coffee, lunches, and beers 5, 6 nights a week,
Yeah.
all day, every day. As many, if whenever somebody wanted to meet with me, I was there, and I did that for over almost 3 years. And yeah, there was a lot of wasted time in there, but it was still effort, and it still counted towards momentum. And it didn't take that long before I started to kind of learn and go, okay, well, this actually works. This doesn't work. Well, this is what I need. And like
Yep.
there was a lot of clarity that came from that. But at the
Yep.
same time, I was kind of feeding my own belief and my own ego and my own
Yes.
kind of, I was putting gas in the tank to keep going because, if you're just sitting around waiting for the phone to ring, it's a pretty lonely existence. So you got to do things like that to kind of keep your engine running.
Yeah. I think that's why people like the idea of social media so much because it creates a false sense of work. It's like I marketed my business today. I posted once.
I
Like
agree.
done.
I
You know
I
what I mean?
think the misleading part though is that like you're swimming against the current because the algorithm and whatever else is going on there, you're not hitting the same way that you would on that coffee date or that lunch date or that whatever that is. Like I know I'm getting through because I'm sitting across the table from somebody,
That.
just like you and I are sitting across a screen talking to each other. Something's hitting here at least, at
Yeah.
minimum there's a connection here where that's the scary part with social media. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying put yourself in positions where you have connections like
More.
this
Yeah.
because there's a lot more, there's a
There's a
lot
lot
more
more meat.
value there. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, and you don't get stuck between cat videos and someone's like crazy uncle screaming about politics. You're able
Well,
to genuinely, and this is why I think you're a podcaster, I'm a podcaster. I teach people about actual podcast guesting. When you're doing this, right, it's a
yeah.
volleyball and you get to connect with people one on one and then one to many. You're able to do it on a long form
Yeah.
and you have a captive audience. It's very different from most other platforms. And so I think both of us are from like the networking, like real connection type of building. And maybe I'm biased. I think that's just a more sustainable way to grow your business. It's the difference between having a bunch of followers and being popular versus having a sustainable and successful business.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a slight brand pivot on that.
Sure.
I think it's also an opportunity for you to show who you are. Where I
1000%.
think I think social media is tough sometimes to do that. I think especially the industry you're in because if you follow what everybody else is doing, you're just giving them a manufactured version of whatever the norm is. I always think of real estate. Realtors kind of just they in many ways they all kind of look alike to a degree.
Yeah.
And it's like for me, it's like no, man. Like you have to find a way to stand out amongst the crowd, and you have to be different, and you have to kind of let your uniqueness shine. So jumping back to the face-to-face networking stuff, and that's one of the biggest things I learned is that
Yeah.
like I've got some interpersonal skills and some opinions and some Midwest charm. I don't know, but there's some things that I can do here that don't come across in a Facebook post.
Yes. Yes. I'm from a long tradition of storytelling. I'm originally from Jamaica. A
I
huge
love
part of
Jamaica,
our
by the way.
culture, I know, a huge part of our culture is storytelling, right? That's how we gather around and storytell. And then I'm also Christian, and a huge part of that culture is storytelling as well. And I felt really pigeonholed in social media because it's the 20 seconds, it's the 30 seconds, it's the get in, get out. But I'm like, wait. I want to connect in like a real way. And it's really hard to do that. I think that you can still have moments where you're going in person. And I think this is something that I didn't do when I was networking, that I think if you're listening to this and you want to take advantage of social media, the best way to do it is to connect it with something else. Mm-hmm. So if you're going out and you're networking, you're meeting with people, take a selfie, follow them on LinkedIn and post a selfie, tag them, say what you learned from the conversation, plug their business, because one, that's giving them free, connection to your network. And you're also putting a little seed in their thing of like, okay, I now owe Carrolee something. You know what I mean? You're going to be top of their mind. And if you're doing that over and over consistently, you're one, having organic content. People are going to think that you're out here moving and shaking, because you are. And you're going to stay at top of mind, not only for the person you're networking with, but now for the folks that are following you on social media. So there are ways to connect. Both Mike are basically saying we're not saying social media is the devil necessarily. No. It's just, I think there's an over-reliance on posting and equating it to growth and real business development. And that's what I've found, and it's an unhealthy obsession.
I think, I mean, this is just my opinion, but I think there's like two major misconceptions or problems, whatever you want to say. I think it's expectation. People have, their expectations are out of whack. They just think progress or success means growth in numbers. It means sales. It means ROI. It means, and depending on your industry and what you're doing or what your approach is, yeah, maybe. But within social media, it could be brand awareness. It could be storytelling. There could be a lot of intangible, things that you're doing that are successful. You just don't have the metrics to prove it. But
yeah.
But if you're going down that road and intentional with it, and it's feeding your brand or it's feeding other aspects of your business, how can it not be successful? So
absolutely,
it's really figuring that out. And then the second thing is, there are so many unnatural parameters within social media that you have to find the natural piece. So like, and what I mean by that is if you're not comfortable jumping on TikTok and flossing, then don't. Like, that's not, you don't have to do that. You don't have to jump in on the trends. You don't have to argue politics on social media. You don't have to, you know what I mean though? Because so many people think, well, if that's what I'm seeing, or if that's the trend, then that must be where I find success. And it's like, no, because the guy that started those trends, he didn't know what he was doing either. It just turned into what it turned into. So find what's natural to you, lean into that, and see where that goes. Or find people that, that maybe align with your vibe or your personal opinions, and then mimic them. You don't necessarily have to chase the trend.
Yeah. The way that I want to describe it is kind of going from high school to college, because when you're in high school, you're really trying so hard to fit in. And so you twist yourself into a pretzel trying to be one of fill in the blank. And then you go to college, and then you find that there are a bunch of yous already there that you don't have to twist to fit in, because those are your people. Right? Yeah. And if you can figure out a way to find your people, no matter where you are, it's going to make any experience more enjoyable. I think what happens on social media, we have fallen from the experience of authenticity and more of, I need to present this in order for people to think this, versus this is who I am. And ironically, the folks that tend to do the best on social media are those people that are like, listen, this is what it is. You know what I mean? Yep. This is how I'm coming. This is what I'm saying. This is, to the point where when they're writing, when you're reading their writing, you're hearing the voice, because it's so real, and you use natural. It's, overused word authentic is the same idea here. Right?
I have
I like your word better
I have
to
a
be natural.
I have a love-hate thing with authenticity. I mean,
Yeah, I
the
like your
idea
word better.
I love the idea of it, but to your point, like the word has been taken and
Yeah,
stretched and manipulated to the
yeah,
point where it doesn't mean anything anymore.
yeah.
It's kind of like, the word integrity. It's like, I got integrity. And it's like, well, you should. That's the whole point. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to celebrate it. Like, that's not,
Also, that's getting subjective, isn't it? Like at one point, integrity meant like one thing, and I feel like now there's a spectrum all of a sudden for like I'm
right.
integrous when it's not this.
Well, it's kind of like authenticity and integrity. Those are words people should use to describe you, not words you use to describe yourself.
Just describe
So
yourself.
it's a little, I don't know, it's a little off. But anyway, I feel like there's this unnatural tendency to kind of try to do what everybody else is doing, and you
Yeah.
don't have to. So
Yeah. And again, like I said, if you're an entrepreneur, you're already not doing what majority
right,
of the world is. You know what I mean? When I think about the numbers, the sheer number of people that are on this planet, and then the amount of people that are entrepreneurs, and then the amount of entrepreneurs that are actually making a certain amount of money, then the entrepreneur, like it gets smaller and smaller. So when you realize that you're already kind of a unicorn, then your whole goal at that point, at least for me, was to like, well, I mean, screw it. I'm already out here in the middle of nowhere, right?
yeah,
Might as well just be myself.
yeah,
And I think it's really going to be no matter what channel you use, whether you're on social, you're on podcasts, etc. Being showing up as yourself is a huge piece. I love that we started with mindset because it's the first thing, and then we went into like work. Like this is going to take work. There is no shortcut. There is no like magic, and all of a sudden now you have this like great business that doesn't exist. And as much as the people that sell you that, they're getting rich off of selling you that, not off of, you know what I mean? And it's a lot of hard work to sell you that if they open their funnel on the back end. It's never easy. And I think once we're okay with that and stop running away from things being hard, we will realize just how resilient we really can be. I think for me, I had to find the thing that I really enjoyed, really like lights me up, and I get excited about it
yeah,
because I'm a passionpreneur. As much as I hate like cute, cutesy words, it is true. If I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, eventually, like I'm gonna suck at it
yep.
and then be miserable. So,
So one of the things I like to talk about a lot with my clients and branding and whatnot is belief. So how much do you think belief plays into all this?
oh my goodness. So I don't know if you've heard this phrase before, but it changed my entire perspective on sales. Pretty much my coach told me that sales is a transference of belief. And when I started to think about it that way, remember I told you I'm a passionate person.
Yep.
If I can show someone else that I'm passionate about the thing that I'm doing, I'm transferring my belief that this is a solution for them and they get excited about it. And now they're ready to, you know what I mean? So, absolutely. If you can believe something, I remember 2015. I'm a graphic designer as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Same. That's where I
I love
started.
love the connection. In 2015, I was doing graphic design on the side. I was still in corporate, doing corporate relations for MIT and the like. And I really wanted to do graphic design full time. But I remember a specific thought. It's one of the only thoughts, like I didn't even say it, that I still remember clearly. The first thought was, wow, it'd be amazing if I could do this full time. Because I had just delivered to a client and they loved the work. And you know the rush that you
Yeah.
get when someone is like, oh my God. And I was like, man, it'd be awesome if I can do this full time. Then the next thought was, you can't do this full time. Who's going to pay you like real money that you can live off of to do this full time? I shut down. It wasn't until years later, 6 years later, that my belief shifted and I said, bump it. I'm going to go full force, all in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to bet on myself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that my skills got exponentially better and now I can charge all the, because I was still undercharging as we do.
Yeah.
It was that I started to believe that it was possible. And when I believed that it was possible, it became possible.
Yeah.
And then I put work behind that belief, and then the results followed. So I mean, in my life, in people's lives, and everyone that I talk to that is an entrepreneur, especially those that are 7-figure, et cetera, it started with the seed. And that seed has always been a deep belief in, hey, something is out here for me. I was made for something better, different, bigger. I believe in this thing that I can't see.
Yep.
Right? So it's such a huge part of that. Such a huge part.
I totally agree. And where you kind of started that, I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of how I explain it to my clients in the sense that, if you don't believe in your brand and what you're doing and the vision for things, like why would anybody else? Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with you that when they buy in and start drinking their own Kool-Aid and they get excited about, like they're more excited just being alone with their brand than they are even getting a client. That's going to come out of them in the sales process. It's going to come out of them in the client experience. And you're still going to have bad clients. You're still going to have projects that don't land. All the natural stuff's still going to happen, but you will win more and you'll be more resilient and you will be able to fall back on that fluffy bed of belief whenever you need to, because you're on the right path and you're doing it for the right reasons, and and you're in full control of where this thing's going, how I might need to pivot or not. Maybe I just don't want to participate in some of this other stuff and I'm just going to not do it. You can really find a lot of power in that belief, but you still have to think strategically and you still have to kind of, watch the landscape of stuff because it's changing all the time. And, but I really think you have to buy in and you have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in your own product.
Yeah. That's the first person you're selling
to.
Yeah, that's the first person you're selling to. You're the first person you ever sell anything to is yourself.
I think it's huge. And I mean, you probably see it too, but I run into so many people that don't, for them, it could be a means to an end. It could be just a job. It could be, it's a business or whatever. And they're just not passionate about it anymore. And it's like, you gotta like this. Otherwise, when you're out there selling it, it shows. And, obviously that hurts the process. But so I think, one of the things just kind of to take away from something you were saying there, I think so many people go through the hardest parts and then they skip the easy. And what I mean by that is like quitting your job and jumping off the ledge of entrepreneurship and betting on yourself and watching your bank account dwindle, and like that's the hardest part. Now going to meetings and networking and like all that stuff like that, I mean it might not be a pleasure cruise, might not be what you want to do, but as compared to jumping off that ledge, you already did the hard part. That was the hardest part, I think.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think it only becomes your own self-created prison if the beginning part isn't, to your point, something that you believe it, right? If you're building, like I'm no longer in the graphic design, web design, creative world in space. I owned an agency for several years and closed it down. There's a reason for that, right? I came into that with years of doing graphic design work, super passionate about it, still very passionate about brand. Do not get me started talking about typography and all the things, right? Yep. But I recognized as a business, it was draining me way more than it was lighting me up. I started to see myself in these meetings trying to sell these people on something that I'm like, I really don't want to do this project, but say yes because I need the money, but I really like, I'm not excited about this. And I think that's when I knew something had to change.
Yeah. And I think it's the ability to evolve.
Yeah.
You know, you were where you were and you evolved to a layer next level and then you went to the next level and you might have separated yourself from where you started, but it still was a kind of rung in that ladder that got you there. Like I'm similar, like I'm still in kind of the creative side of things, but where I was, 9, 10 years ago versus today is vastly different because we have evolved. And do I miss parts of it? Yeah, when they're good, but I don't miss some of that. You know what I mean? Like
That part.
I don't miss the beat down sometimes
Oh
where
my
it's like
gosh.
you hate everything. How's that work?
Like nothing, like all
Yeah.
of this, you just,
Yeah. So yeah, I don't miss that stuff, but that's part of it. Like that's part of
yeah.
this entrepreneurial thing is in resiliency is you got to have this mindset to evolve and be ready for it.
Yeah. Not be scared of it. We say that, and again, it goes back to the whole cliche, right? It sounds a lot easier. None of what I'm saying, and I want to be clear, is a walk in the park. None of what I'm saying is like this, like, and we're done.
Well,
None of
did
it.
did you go to art school?
No.
Okay, whatever school you went to. I went to a creative art school, whatever. And in the 2+ years I was in my program, not once did we have a class about hating everything you do. Never did they have a class on like, hey, just so you know, you're gonna get a wide variety of clients, and some of them are just gonna hate everything you touch, and some of them are gonna pick the wrong logos, and some of
Oh
them
my
are gonna,
gosh.
and some of them will have no eye for color or design, and nobody told us that. So as we trudge out into the world and start experiencing this, it's like the Twilight Zone. It's like I
Yeah.
up because up to this point, I got straight A's on everything I touched. So I kind of thought I was amazing. And now I'm just getting my teeth kicked in every time I turn around. And yeah, I had to learn that the hard way.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's rough. Like it really is.
Listen, I think that maybe, and this is something I actually spoke on. I spoke on a panel when I went back to my old college to talk to students that were there. So I graduated with a communications degree. I taught
Hmm.
myself design.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
I mean,
And I went back because I wanted to talk to these students. Because honestly, similar to you, there's a lot of smoke being blown up, where when I was in school. I was at the top of my class. I was getting all A's. Literally, I think I was like number 2 when I graduated, right? And so they told me everything was going to be great. It didn't matter that I was graduating in the middle of a recession. Like,
yeah.
just didn't prepare me at all for reality. And that level of rejection straight away was probably the best teacher. I didn't feel like it at the time, but I certainly think getting your teeth knocked in right out of college taught me to, like, put your chin up. And it's harder for me to feel defeated at this point because they came heavy and often
Yeah.
when I was pretty young still,
Right.
so
And at the beginning, you have no credibility. So
no.
like I remember, a lot of my first clients, like I knew that like creatively, like I'm pretty sure I know more than you, but I have no credibility. I've been at this job a month, and whatever they're saying, like, and I can't tell you exactly how long, but I would say somewhere in the first 3 months, I took my, like, no, let me explain it to you. Like I took my chances to try to, flex my intellect on them, and yeah, it didn't work. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, so basically, I just need to do what I'm told and try
Yep.
to influence it from the inside,
Yep.
and it was, like you said, it was the best way to learn it, but
It sucked.
it took me a few months to be like, this is crazy town because nobody told me this. We
No.
never talked about this in school,
No.
you know?
And and I am not the person who's just like, because I said so. I
Oh
I am
no.
not the person just to follow, okay, because you said so, I'm going to do it. And I am grateful that my first supervisor saw that and just kept giving me more work.
Yeah.
It was a great strategy on
Well,
his end because he just shut me up, and I got to own certain things at 22 and 23 that I shouldn't have. But because I was hungry and I kept asking for more, kept doing more, and he never made me feel like, oh, it's because this is what it is and it's because I said so. That was probably one of the last bosses that I had that was like that. Every single supervisor that I had after that was exactly the experience you were talking about. And I do think entrepreneurs have to remember, like you were bred in those environments, and it's going to take this like a while to undo that in your head and give yourself the permission to ask questions about what you're doing and is it working. Don't just do the thing because you have been doing the thing. If it's not
right.
working, find another way.
Yeah, just be ready, prepared, and willing to evolve at all times.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say kind of in there is pick your battles.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I learned in that first
Yeah.
6 months is that, I'd protest or I'd kind of argue my point if I needed to, but there were times where I'm like, okay, I don't care that much about that shade of blue. I'm just gonna, you got it. Like I would just do it because I needed to kind of learn how to kind of dance in a way with the customers
Yeah.
and kind of the flow of things. So that
Yeah.
said, yeah, I mean, tell me more about where we can find information about what you're doing, the programs you're teaching, and
Sure,
kind of the
sure.
things that you're, kind of up to these days.
Sure. So there are a few different ways to work with us and with me specifically. As I've mentioned throughout the podcast, I do podcast pitching. So if you are an expert looking for ways to kind of get off of social media but still figure out, content, podcasts, obviously you're listening, that they're awesome. We also do content creation for that. However, if you are the DIY of the bunch, which I definitely was for a long time, we have a podcast pitching guide. It's always tripping me up with that name. And that link is going to be provided to you, I think in the show notes or somewhere.
Yep.
So you'll be able to download that. It is one of the best things that we've created. It's not just like an overused pitch letter that it's a bunch of information. There's a tech stack in there for you to use. As you see, I'm having a microphone so that no matter what's happening, because people just love mowing their lawns right when I'm about to go on podcasts. Yeah. So like you learn to do those things. So that's there. If you want to follow me, I'm always giving tips, ironically, on social media at Carrolee Moore on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah. The last thing before we sign off, I just want to say, A, thank you for being on, but B, for those who are looking into podcasting and want to kind of go down that road, it's scary, but it's not that scary. Like
It's not.
get comfortable, start doing it. I mean, I'm sure you'd guide those people through that, but
The water's warm.
it really is. It's easier than it looks. I will
It
say
is.
that. But once you get started, you'll figure some of those things out. But
Yeah.
Carrolee, thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you.
yeah, thank you very much.